Hello, hello. This is Josh with the Synchronized Universe podcast. Just driving home from work, trying to decompress after that crazy, crazy day. My goodness. All right, a lot of people traveling today. Just a crazy day. In any case, I wanted to get on and talk a little bit about mental health because it's something that's definitely affecting me heavily lately and affecting a lot of my friends. And I was reading some articles that talk about depression and talk about all the different studies about is there really a chemical imbalance in your brain, or because that's what they call it. Like when you have depression, they're like, oh, you have a chemical imbalance, let's give you drugs to balance you out. And I played that game for a lot of years, even considered recently going back on meds, but after all the stuff I've read and all the different scientific articles I've read, most of the time there's a reason that you're depressed, whether you want to deny it or push it down further or whatever you want to do to try to pretend it's not. But generally, there's a reason for your depression. And a lot of times it's stuff you haven't dealt with. Just because you're not thinking about something anymore does not mean that you've dealt with it. Like, you can only deal with something by actually dealing with it. And that's, talking to lots of people like about mental health because a lot of people come to me for counseling purposes, or I've generally been my friend, the friend group counselor most of my life because I'm good at talking to people about issues, and like I actually wanted to be a psychologist. But what I don't like in my experience with going to different psychologists and stuff like that is like they essentially most of the time just want to pump you full of drugs. And while yes, it does balance you out and get you feeling okay, it was never meant to be a long-term thing. Like, you never in your life have been tested to see if you have a chemical imbalance. You just take their word for it. I'm depressed, I'm going to get you meds, but it's not supposed to be permanent. You're not supposed to get on depression meds and just stay on them forever like they want you to do. You're supposed to get right, get to the point where you can talk and start to figure out what it is inside of you that needs to be dealt with. And that's the problem I had with a lot of these doctors is that, like, I'd go back, tell them, what's going on, and they would just up my meds. We're going to up your milligrams to the point where you're a zombie and you really don't exist. You know what I mean? Um, and that's my problem with the mental health industry as a whole is, honestly, you are, you're an industry. You're a product. Like, not a product, but you're a consumer, and they need to sell you a product. And honestly, there's no money in people being healthy. So anybody who's listening to this that trusts the pharmaceutical companies clearly has not paid attention. They would not exist if we were healthy. And that's the bottom line. That's why I've never trusted them through all of this stuff we've gone through the past couple of years. I don't trust the pharma companies. I don't care. If you do, that's fine. That's on you. But I especially would never trust somebody who makes a life-giving or life-saving drug like insulin outrageously expensive like it is. That is ridiculous. That is the epitome of the worst. These are the worst kind of people. Like, they don't have to, sell it for that much. They could easily cut the price down. It does not cost them barely anything to make insulin, first of all. And in Canada, they sell it for, a fraction of the cost. So you can't tell me that they can't do it. I mean, you want to continue on blindly trusting them, by all means, that is your choice. But not me. But in any case, yeah, so I went through, doctor after doctor, and, like, I was put on so much meds after essentially after I lost my daughter, was the first time I got put, heavily on meds. And what it boils down to is my daughter died, and I was horribly depressed from it. But instead of allowing myself to go through all the motions and emotions and all that stuff, I used these medications that they were giving me to bury it. And then I used alcohol to bury it. And then I used drugs to bury it. But in reality, it doesn't go anywhere. Like, your emotions that you don't deal with don't go anywhere. They don't disappear. Like our entire lives, most people's parents used to do it that way. They tell you to bury it, just like guys. Guys, they tell you to, trap your emotions inside. Man up. That's what they tell you. But you start to look at their lives and how they've dealt with their emotions, how their parents dealt with their emotions, and none of it was healthy, bro. The answer for most of them was to go climb into a bottle and, yes, I'm going to spend some time at the bar. And that doesn't do anything either. All you're doing is burying your emotions. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a drink every now and then. I mean, I don't drink because I don't have a happy medium. No, I was an alcoholic. But, like, all these people, that are out there getting drunk every day, bearing these emotions, they're not solving anything. It's never going to solve anything. It's never going to go away. And no matter how much medications you put into your body, those emotions are not going to go. You have to properly face these emotions and deal with them. That is the only way to process them. I don't care what anybody says. That is literally what therapy is designed for, is so you can reach into your problems and face them head on. Essentially, they beat around the bush with it and milk you for everything you got, month after month or week after week, like $100 an hour. And, they make little tiny breakthroughs and stuff, when in reality, they should just be like, look, let's analyze your life. Let's determine, did you properly deal with this? Did you bury this? How did you deal with it? Like, there's so much that can be done that they don't do. And, like, this is coming from firsthand experience, man. Like, I started going to school for mental health because, like, I was so interested in it. But I don't like I don't like how the industry is handled. Like, I really don't. I don't, I want to help people. Like, I don't know, the way that they teach you to do it is, I don't think it's right. I think it's all an industry. I think, they're just trying to make a dollar. And you start to realize a lot of these people that are trying to help you are messed up themselves. You're you're trying to teach us, but you're not following your own advice, type of deal. And I am the victim of that myself as well. You know what I mean? Trying to teach things and trying to live by what I'm saying. It can be hard at times, but I don't know. I've been through so much, and trying to turn around that pain and turn it into helping somebody else is what gives me strength. That is the case with a lot of people in mental health. I'm not saying that all mental health people are bad. I'm just saying that there's a lot of, you got to sift through all the bad ones to find the few good. You know what I mean? And just, I don't know. I got tired over the years of getting pumped full of drugs, and honestly, it just like nearly destroyed some of my relationships because I was so doped up on these medications that they were giving me that I didn't feel at all. So it looked like I didn't care. For example, like when my daughter passed, it looked like I didn't care to my significant other. And that created a big, I found out later that it created a big problem in our relationship because it seemed like she was the only one that was caring about our daughter passing. And that obviously is the furthest thing from the truth. It actually destroyed me. To this day, it still bothers me. And it's something that I've had to, write it out. I've sat and I've, written down my feelings and try to, express my feelings for that day. And there is no simple way of dealing with your trapped emotions. Not at all. It's going to be crying. It's going to be anger. It's going to be literally experiencing the moment. You know what I mean? But once you deal with it, it's gone. You know what I mean? You can breathe. You can take a deep breath and be like, okay, that's not going to keep coming back to haunt me and cause depression later. Because, if you start to look into the science behind depression that they're coming out with now, and the science of emotions are things. We're not taught that they're things because the way we view, the human anatomy and all that stuff is, a lot of it's wrong. And they're slowly but surely coming to this point. Like, there's a good example. You can watch a documentary called Emotion. And there's a bunch of prominent neuroscientists and, really big name people in this that talk about how, like, emotions are literally energy. And what happens is they get trapped in your body when you don't deal with them. And this trapping of energy becomes other things. And there's all sorts of, proof that one of the causes of, like, cancer in certain spots is trapped anger. And, whether or not you want to believe it, here's an example. So, did you know that you can actually turn on the stress hormone by your thoughts alone? You can actually make yourself stressed and exhibit symptoms of stress, like in your physical body, just by your thoughts. I need you to think about that long and hard, because what that tells you is that, most of this stuff begins in our minds. Our minds have the ability not only to generate stress in the body, but also to generate health. So it's very important that, we start to really, not only watch our thoughts, but start to deal with these trapped emotions. Like, if you got a lot of trauma in your life and you're wondering why your life is messed up, you need to start with the trauma, because your whole life is then built around that trauma you have stored in your body. That's what it boils down to. Like, you had a lot of, say for me, I had a lot of traumatic experiences when I was a child. And, I don't blame it for anybody that's listening. I don't blame anybody for that. Like, I've come to the point where I realize that trauma is carried down. Your parents experienced trauma and then carried it on to you, et cetera, and so on and so forth. And that is the case with almost every single person I've met and talked to about it. They had a lot of stuff happen when they're kids. And what you think is that, that's when I was a kid and it doesn't affect me now, but it's not true. We literally build entire identities around our traumatic experiences. Some people turn to drugs to deal with the stuff inside. Some people turn to sex. Some people turn to, anything that they can think of. They turn into a compulsion addict. And that's been me my whole life, is to cope with the different trauma. I sought outside things, that release dopamine. So, that's why it was so easy for me to get addicted to drugs, so easy for me to get addicted to pretty much anything. And that's a realization you have to come to as somebody who's trying to seek healing for yourself. The first thing to admit is you got to go inside and be like, yes, I messed up. This happened to me. But the thing is, you're not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. So no matter what happened in the past, you can choose to be better and you can deal with it and come on top. And that's what I want. Anybody who's listening here today, this is kind of different from my normal podcast, but this is one of the areas I want to touch, because I've literally been through quite a bit in my lifetime. Lots and lots of trauma. Everybody I've talked to about it is like, holy crap, how do you even function? And the fact is, you gotta start dealing with it. You gotta wake up and be like, hey, I am worth it, and today's gonna be the day I'm gonna start fixing it. And dang right, I have all sorts of days where I'm messed up. Anybody who's trying to say that they're going through healing and not having days that are messed up is lying. Like, I have weeks at a time where I can't function because the depression hits me so hard. But then, I have, I'll wake up the next day, I'll be completely fine. I'll be like, oh yes, man, okay, I can finally breathe again. And sometimes, unfortunately, people get to those super low points and they don't make it to the next day, because, the little voice in their back of their head is telling them that they're not worth a crap. And that voice is lying to you. Like, you need to understand that in your mind, anything that's a negative voice, you can control. So your subconscious mind is what is bringing up and welling up all these negative emotions because of the trapped stuff. So you can actually, if you start to experience these really lows, you can literally speak with authority to yourself. And that's why they talk about the power of positivity, because it's a real thing. Your mind takes you at your word. You're actually consistently creating your reality through your habitual thought patterns. So that's why the power of positivity and the law of attraction work the way they do. It's because it's through your words. And it works for both. It works for both positive and negative. So you can literally command yourself, like, hey, those thoughts don't belong here. I know that, anything good, anything that's good for me is not going to bring me down like that. So they don't belong here. You literally speak to yourself out loud. People may look at you like you're crazy. Do it in your home, yell into your pillow, do what you got to do. But don't let those thoughts, don't let a temporary feeling make you make a permanent decision. You know what I mean? Like, suicide doesn't end anything. It's going to end your pain, but then your pain is going to be transferred to every person who cares about you. And it's going to be a ripple effect. Like, it causes so much turmoil that you don't think about, because ultimately the decision is selfish. Granted, I have a different view on suicide, because, I've dealt with it. Someone close to me, close to my wife, committed suicide, and it's a terrible thing. So I know firsthand what it does. And ultimately, this person, was being abused mentally, and that they thought that was their only way out. And unfortunately, like, it's hard to say, you know what I mean? Ultimately, the decision was selfish because you're choosing to end your life, even though people love you around you. But she was also scared, so it's a catch-22 for me. Like, I'm not trying to offend anybody here, not trying to say it. I'm just saying that ultimately the decision does end up being selfish because of the lives you destroy of the people that care about you. I've watched my wife go through so much because of what happened, and all I can do is be there for her as much as I possibly can. And what sucks is the person that drove, her mom to that is, he's the worst human ever. And that person, honestly, is ultimately selfish as well because of what he did. But yeah, that's, on a different note. Like, so yeah, it's something I've had to deal with in my life. And when I was younger, one of my cousins committed suicide. And I've literally watched it destroy so many people. It sucks, man. Um, there's nothing in your life that can't be fixed. Like, there's a person that jumped from, I believe it's from the Golden Gate Bridge in California, and he ended up surviving. And he said the moment that he released his hands from the rail, he realized all the problems in his life could be fixed, and he wanted to live. And, it was one of those profound moments because, like, you know that you're going to die. And that's why when people are faced with death, they ultimately have, a lot of times, like, people who are told they have cancer are going to have a month to live. That month becomes, like, they have a spiritual awakening. And it's because, like, when you're faced with death, you start to realize that life's problems really aren't that bad. Like, they really aren't. If you really buckle down and just dive into the problems that you have, you start to realize that you can handle anything. There's literally nothing in this world that you cannot handle and deal with. Your problems may seem like they're the end of the world, but you just got to break them down and start working on them. Instead of going to the bottle, instead of going to the, excuse my language, instead of, going, seeking random sex with people or seeking drugs or anything like that, start to deal with these problems that are in front of you in a healthy way. My suggestion, get out a journal and write. That is probably the number one thing. You got, problems with your significant other, you guys have problems communicating, do it in writing. For someone like me who suffered from anxiety most of my life, writing was the answer for me. Writing was the answer for my wife. It helped us get through so much stuff. And if you're listening to this, honey, I love you. Sorry to name drop you and whatnot. But yeah, man, writing is a good way to get it all out. Um, Doing stuff like this, getting on, making your own little podcast, talking to people about it who may or may not even be listening. That's another way. You know, get these things out. Start to talk to people around you. Start to help people around you. Like, do something with the pain that is healthy. Transform that pain. There's one of the famous quotes from this course that me and the wifey took one time, and it was talking about. It said that pain that is not wait a minute. Pain that is not transformed will be transmitted. So pain that you do not transform inside your body is going to be transmitted to those around you. And we've all seen it. We've all seen our parents do it. If you had perfect parents, by all means, that's awesome. I'm glad for you. But most people don't. Most people's parents, like, they're growing up in front of their eyes, just like, you don't realize it. Just like my kids don't realize it. We've been growing, like, as parents, as people, while they're growing. I mean, my parents were growing up as people when I was a kid. And, honestly speaking, like, I don't view, anything as bad anymore that happened when I was a kid. I view that people were dealing with pain and they're dealing with it in the only way they knew how. And it's, that's what you have to do when you have, start to become more emotionally intelligent, is like, you got to start recognizing that these people are, it's not, they're coming from a terrible place too. Like, that's what it boils down to. Anyway, I'm about out of time here, about actually at my house, but it was great to talk. Anybody who's listening, just know that you are loved, you are appreciated. I appreciate anyone who takes the time to listen. Hopefully I can help somebody with my words here. This is Josh with the Synchronized Universe podcast. Have a great day.